Alright, man. We have got the 2071 Johnsford back on the bench here. After watching the footage of this thing running in the wood, there's something very not right about this thing. And during my inspection, of course, I saw the bluing on the crankshaft and the rubbing. And I think it's doing that again. So somebody had a good point. It could be that the crankshaft is like really offset. But I mean, there's like 1/8 of an inch of play that the crankshaft has to move in the case. And you would start to see something like when I replaced the crank seals. I probably would have seen something that would indicate that it was off. But it could have been the bearing. And it could have been an intermittent problem. Like only one spot as that crankshaft is moving around. Like the bearing might have got out of sync, or, you know, a roller fell out of the cage and is kind of rattling back and forth, allowing the crank to move. I don't know. We're going to dig in here and figure it out today, though. Welcome to Man Time. Alright, well, there is a couple things that I want to do today. One of them, so when the saw quit running right, or just basically wasn't running right with a load on it. It was running okay without the load. That's a freedom dispensing unit right there. Love that in the country. Anyways, so the saw wasn't running right with a load on it. And I got to thinking back, like, man, that crank had really bad bluing, like on the lower rod end side of it. And so that would indicate probably something wrong with that rod bearing. And with it running crappy like that, it could have been that, it could have been the bearing, but either way, it's going to be the crankshaft that's bad and or the bearing that's bad. So I got a new set of bearings, and I went and found a crank on eBay. New, those are going for between like 150, 200, somewhere in there. Again, I don't have a local Husqvarna dealer that's going to be a good, reliable source for spare parts. So I go to eBay and ended up finding a used one in fairly okay shape. We're going to see it here in a minute because I got to put new bearings on it. That's going to be the step one, right? Preparation for pulling this apart and seeing the worst. Crank is still bad. Bearing may be part of the problem. Rod has, again, worn on the piston. So I've got another piston just in case, 50mm single ring, same piston. I hate to get into these projects and leave like a box full of parts. It's just really hard to pick up where you left off. And I mean, you want to approach any maintenance type of situation that way. You want to evaluate it as best you can and figure out what kind of parts you're going to need and tools you're going to need to make that repair. Get those tools and parts you need before you start the repair. Otherwise, you know, you see these like driveways with half torn apart cars in them for months and months that turns into years and years. That's kind of how that stuff starts. But anyways, I'm going to get these bearings heated up with a heat gun. I'm going to go grab my crank out of the freezer. Wife found it in there and wasn't very happy. She's like, what is this metal part in the freezer? It's my chainsaw crankshaft. Why is it by the ice? You know, it's just these things that we have to explain are difficult sometimes as men. We just have to overcome those things and press forward. Oh man, these SKF, like Italy, these are 6202/C3s made in Italy. I mean, they are just glorious. Yeah. Either way, this saw deserves a good set of new bearings in it. Probably should have started there and just done it the right way. This is going to be like a primary pickup for me, like my 65. So let's get these going. I'm going to grab my heat gun, get these heated up, and I'll get the crank out here. Once I get kind of everything set up, we'll get the camera in here. It should be a pretty quick process. If I can quit blabbing for a minute, I'll get the heat gun out here, like heat up these bearings, run inside, grab the crank real quick, get the camera set up before all that hit play, I should just be able to set the bearings on the crank, and then we'll get to disassembly and seeing what was going on the inside of this thing. Well, that didn't work. Alright, man, we are at the moment of truth. I got it all broke down here and just got the exhaust off, got the carb out of the way, got the head broke free from the sealant. I went ahead and looked inside here. I didn't see anything that looked too bad. And now we can see what we can see. Alright, good deal. Cylinder is still 100%. Yeah, you can see here, like the liquid gasket, it squishes into the transfer. So you've got a little bit of your transfer lost, you know, to that gasket, which kind of stinks. Maybe I can do a better job. Maybe I can do a better job trying not to get so much on there. But there wasn't very much. I mean, minimal amount of squish. But anyways, I tried to get the bearings on the crank. Yeah, we'll try again. Okay, let's see what the piston is looking like here. The problem was the crankcase was getting like really, really hot. Really hot. Yeah, so the piston seems fine. The crank seems fine. There's lots of lube down here. But why was the crank getting so hot? Yeah, you can see that 40-to-1 on the on the red armor. It's just coated. I mean, everything has got a nice coat. And still, we don't have any up and down play. The only thing I can think of, you know, is the crank is bad or a bearing's bad. So I'm going to break it down the rest of the way where we can get in here and look at these bearings. That's the only way I'm going to figure it out. So we will check back in a minute. Well, it is about that time to figure out what the heck is going on in here. And it's tough, you know, it's tough getting the criticism. Not even criticism, like helpful hints from other men, right? I mean, that's what men do. We give advice to people struggling to fix something, right? That's just what we do. But it makes you question, like, did you, like, really take a look at everything and make sure everything was good? And I mean, I'm looking at it again. I don't see, again, any problem, you know, with the bearings or the lineup. So this is before we're splitting it, just like as disassembled, right? You would expect to see, you know, something going on here, but there's just not. Like, it's centered as far as I can see. If anything, maybe it's biased a little bit this way, which wouldn't make sense because it's rubbing on this side. And the piston has an uneven wear pattern, and we'll look at that a little bit closer compared to a brand new one, you know, here in a second. But let's see if we can get this sucker split and maybe get a, you know, factual reason why it is not running right. Stuff. Is there one in here? There is. There's one right there. That was our issue. Attention to the details. And that's kind of what I was talking about. Like, did I pay enough attention as I was taking this thing apart, you know, the first time? Or, you know, did I miss something? It's hard to say. But here's where we're going to find the culprit. Yeah, this side. This side is where I suspected we would have. Yeah, that's definitely a one-time use O-ring. Yeah, and the bearing seems fine. It's got a little hiccup. Yeah, the bearing is not fine. One side wants to bite on the bearing and the other side on the case. Just a little bigger hammer. Alright, well, here is what we got looking at the crank. And you can see there, it is starting to blue there. I didn't see that before. And it's, you know, blued all around there. And there's damage there. So, I mean, if you look at it, I mean, I don't see any reason why that is, though. Like this. I mean, this saw is old and wore out, but the crank is like the least likely, you know, part of the system to fail. And I inspected, you know, all around here. I guess the rule of thumb, though, is if you see purple, you know, throw it away. Huh. Yeah, there's a wear mark here on the clutch side. Let's see if there's a similar wear on the piston on the clutch side. So it's intake this side, intake on this side. So I mean clutch is on this side. So inside of here, yeah, there is some wear. Yeah, there is some wear inside of there. There's clutch side. But there's still a ridge and like a groove. And then here's our flywheel side, and it's actually smooth, like there's no ridge. So, like looking at this inside of here, you've got clutch side here, and that is again going to be on this side. So if we mate these two up, yeah, I mean it's still a pretty nice fit. The bluing here would be on this side, yeah, so it was rubbing there. This is just a confusing one, because I don't see anything wrong with this, other than the bluing. Like as far as, you know, up and down play, there is none. Like whatever direction I rotate it to, there's no back and forth play. There's side to side play, right? But it's able to move freely along that bearing. You know, unless, yeah, I just don't know. Sweden H99. I would have thought that maybe this was getting hot because of bearing and heating this up, but that's not the case. Our wrist pin bearing here is also, you know, starting to blue. But it's in good shape. Like, I don't see anything that would have caused that. And our bearing is in fairly good shape here. Yeah, I don't feel anything bad there. Huh. So I just don't know. I am going to replace the bearings in the crank and port the cylinder. Okay, man, it is the next day, and after spending a lot of time looking at this crank, I did end up seeing what was wrong with it. And you can just barely see it kind of on the inside of this bearing right here. It's shiny on this side, right over here. And the crank actually sits sideways and kind of like digs in. So it's kind of like sitting side. I don't know if the actual crankshaft is bent or the piston rod is bent or what, but it tends to like work over, and it'll bend like one way and not like right there is straight up and down, and then it bends to the side, and it's just wearing out. Yeah, so this is like my first chainsaw with a bad crank. Yeah, really weird. Really weird. Alright, man. Well, YouTube doesn't like me uploading videos more than 18 minutes long, so I'm going to break this up into 18-minute chunks. There's a full video if you want to see this saw go from a junked out mechanic special to a running saw. But as far as the YouTube goes, they wanted an 18-minute chunk. So this is one of the parts, and you'll see the rest of the parts, or you can go back and watch the video. Whatever you do, get out there, have you some man time too.